the point of this paper is actually to look at what's going on in Ukraine as part of a much larger global context of what we used to call the information age, but now I think increasingly people are calling it the disinformation age. So I wanted to sort of take a step back for a second and consider something that's irked me for a long time. And I know a few of you must have noticed this, who use the internet a lot. Why are there so many kittens on the internet? Have you noticed this on Twitter? Kittens, Portuguese, ISIS with kittens, everyone's got like kitten feet non-stop. And finally somebody managed to explain this to me. Why are there so many kittens on the internet? A very smart guy who has his own institute for studying emotional and narrative patterns online. And his basic premise is this. When we go to social media, we don't go there for information. No? When we go to social media, we go there for psychological confirmation. We're looking for likes. We're looking for approval. We're looking for an ego boost. Essentially, social media is one huge narcissism machine. You go there, you get your first like, you like it, but then you want another one, and another one. And he followed over 4 years of study at Northeastern University and then at Lucca, Italy, the emotional pattern of behaviour in what are called social media echo chambers, so like your little community on Facebook or Twitter. Always the emotional narrative, whether it's in conspiratorial, pro-Ukrainian, pro-Russian, pro-Gove, pro-Johnson, always one emotional narrative, from good, positive feelings to anger. Always towards anger. No? Because you're looking like a coke addict, you're looking for the next like, you don't get it, you get more and more angry. As you get more and more angry and more frustrated, you start to look for narratives which fit your confirmation bias, which make you look good. You're not looking for facts. No? This great legend we have that the internet will provide facts to everyone. People don't go there looking for facts. And the only thing that can, for a moment, like a shot of morphine for a heroin addict, quell that emotional itch, is a picture of something helpless that you can look after and you feel powerful. A kitten. So we live in this world of echo chambers, yeah? We live in this world which is already divided. And we're talking about what the Kremlin is doing in Ukraine. It's just trying to fire up the divisions already there. So I was in Odessa as part of the research in this paper. 44 TV channels. 44 TV channels in one Odessa. Countless websites, yeah? Newspapers, and more free media than many places in Britain. Back when the Cold War finished, it was a victory of freedom of speech against censorship. That was a huge part of the victory. Yeah? And the more media we thought we'd have, the more truth we thought we'd have, the better democracy, the better debate, the better society, the better things. Doesn't work that way. You have all this media, people go into echo chambers. Firstly. Secondly, there's some sociology, not from Odessa, but from Kharkiv, also from the Baltics. When people are faced with too much information, with contradictory information, all the focus groups sort of come back to the same themes. They just don't believe anyone. And in a space where they don't believe anyone, they just go with the truth that's the most emotional and it's the closest to them. So again, this fracturing with the amount of media. So I got to Odessa, and as you all know, there was this terrible tragedy in Odessa. Do I need to go into the detail? I'm sure everyone in this room knows the story. A pretty propaganda of, what's very unclear at first, a scuffle between pro-Russians and pro-Ukrainians, that a charge up to the trade union building with a mysterious fire, where 40, 44, 200, nobody could tell, pro-Russians died. This was immediately, the rumours started spreading, that this was all a plot by Obama, that there were secret Praviceta shooters in the building, massacring people. It became an international story. Russia Today, the Kremlin Disinformation, international disinformation arms are pumping out stories that this is a genocide, that we should name a square of martyrs after those people who died in Italy. This was all planned. This showed that the Ukrainian regime was as bad, the new one was as bad as the old one, and so on and so forth. And for a while I talked to people in Odessa. Odessa, which you all know, is a city of sort of endless conversation, endless chatter, was completely silent. Nobody could talk to each other. Everybody had their own version of events. Everybody suspected everything. And obviously, well, that goes without saying, there was no investigation from the police. They were implicated. Kiev, just a cab. And a bunch of local activists, or journalists, civil society leaders, realised that they needed to create sort of truth and reconciliation. You know, they needed to bring the people of the town together, these people who live among 44 different echo chambers, you know, people who live in this weird mosaic of media and can't talk to each other anymore. So they created a public investigation, which is exactly what a public broadcaster does. That's what the BBC would do, or a fact-checking organisation does. And slowly, empirically, with evidence, they piece together what happened by, through photographs, through witnesses. And they basically, managed to form the basic story of what happened. The fire had been accidental, there'd been no shooters there, the amount of people who died is exactly consistent with the amount of people who always die in fires, like 110. So they managed to sort of do the story, and they presented it to Odessa. And I met the woman who organised it, and she said, we completely failed. Nobody cared. Everybody was in their echo chamber, nobody wanted to hear the truth, nobody was interested in the facts. And she did a very memorable line to me. She said, we try to distinguish between truth and lies, and we fail. So is there no way out of these echo chambers? In that case, sort of the Putins will always be able to stir a country like Ukraine, stir a country like Latvia. ISIS will be able to stir the communities in England. I then met with the head of the local information policy. She then went on to work with the project. And she was like, so how did you deal with it? She's like, everyone in this town has got their own truth. You can't ask two people, each has their own version of events. And there was a real moment where it looked as if Odessa would burst into civil war, because that's what the Russians were trying to do. They're trying to aggravate these divisions to a point of civil war, and then Putin would have to march in and save the city. But she was head of the information policy for the whole town. She knew her city really, really well. And she knew that actually, despite all these divisions, there were things that united them. And the things that united them had actually nothing to do with the war between Russia and Ukraine. They had to do with, put it very simply, security. And all the sociology that's been done all across Ukraine shows that the main kind of thing that binds people there is this desire for security, which is very different. You say, oh, everyone wants security. This is a very specific form of security based around, a terrible 100 years, or Timothy Snyder called the Bloodlands, when you had the Holocaust, the Soviet occupation, all the other occupations roll over you, you have a real desire not to fight. You want people to leave you alone. So what did she do, this woman who ran information policy? She didn't put any sort of advertisement saying, we love Ukraine, none of that stuff. She put posters everywhere with photographs of Donbass. Photographs of the already wrecked Donbass. And that spoke to people, because they realised that if they started taking up arms, it wouldn't bring freedom, it wouldn't bring prosperity, it would bring the Donbass. It would bring havoc. Pro-Ukrainian sentiment shot up. She was very honest with me. This is not because everybody has fallen in love with the Ukrainian idea, but Ukraine now represents security. So why I'm telling this long story? One of our key conclusions, and it's as clear as Ukraine as it is going to be in England as we try to reunite our country, which is divided in a way that any observer of Ukraine would find very familiar. Today's messaging, whatever you want to call it, strategic communications, is not going to be about talking. It's actually not going to be about big ideas. It's going to be about listening. It's going to be about understanding every echo chamber and understanding what binds them. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we talk a lot in this paper about public broadcasting. Public broadcasting was all about setting standards. That was the reality. The BBC, the New York Times, that was the big overarching reality. Even if we build up the public broadcaster now in Ukraine, it'll be just another channel in 44. The public broadcaster of the future, weirdly enough, and this is more a hypothesis I think we have rather than we'd like to try this, is going to have to be an activist broadcaster. It's going to have to find the things that people find in common, fixing roads, reform of the judiciary, and create media and activist projects with entertainment in them, with comedy in them, but would actually change people's lives. And that's a huge paradigm shift for what a public service broadcaster does. The BBC is all about, we don't do politics, we're outside. The new BBCs of the future are actually going to have to get involved in people's lives. And hopefully maybe from us it can grow into that one day. So anyway, so these are the broader things. That's what, generally when I talk about Ukraine, I always try to explain to people, don't put this in a paradigm of transitory. Right? Ukraine isn't the past, Ukraine is the future. Chaotic, fractured, looking for a national identity in a sort of post-national age, but where little forms of identity are still very strong. So I think Ukraine has a huge amount to teach the world. I'm a bit tired of all these endless sort of consultants landing in Kiev and lecturing them on how to build democracy. Actually, I think Ukraine is really at the avant-garde of these processes and incredibly exciting.